What's up, guys? It's Matt. On today's edition of the TKW Podcast, Kyle Maggio and I talk about the Knicks' first preseason game. We touch on Kevin Knox and Mitchell Robinson's debut. We talk about what we saw from the backcourt with Frank Ntilikina and Trey Burke and Emmanuel Mudiay. And just in general, what we expect for the season, what our takeaways are from the first preseason game for this year's Knicks team. So without further ado, let's go. Hello, folks, and welcome to the TKW Podcast. I am Matt Spendley, and I'm joined today by Kyle Maggio.
What's going on, my friend? It feels very good to be back. We officially got out of the woods here. The off-season's over, so we actually have basketball to discuss, and that's always very, very fun.
I'm ready to discuss this game. It's funny because we're recording this right at the end, so there's 34 seconds left. It's tied at 108. Wizards are on the line. So we're just going to talk about what happened tonight because it was absolutely stupendous to have actual basketball on my television tonight. It was an entertaining game, the first half especially. The third quarter started to slow down a bit. It gets sloppy, especially when you get the reserves in there. But, you know, we saw some great signs from some of the young Knick players. Kevin Knox and Mitchell Robinson had good games. We saw some nice things from some other guys, some of the veterans that have been around. So, Kyle, first impressions, thoughts on the game?
I really enjoyed how aggressive Knox was with looking for his offense. I liked his activity on the boards as well. He finished with a double-double. So he was 13 points, 4 of 9 shooting, 2 of 5 from deep, 3 of 4 from the line. He had 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 turnover, and a couple of steals. And it was just little things that I saw from him tonight. Not just stuff that shows up in the stat sheet, but one drive, I think he drove left and he kind of just botched his finish, which we know he does if he drives left. And then he just, instead of like getting down about it or like floating out of bounds like a lot of players do, he just, like a magnet, just went right back to the ball, right at the rim, got the ball back, got fouled, and went to the line. And that's nice. You want to see that from a young player. He's not giving up, keeping his head down or anything, and especially from your top picks, so that was enjoyable. Another thing that I like too, I know he has the 3 assists, but one pass in particular, and I don't want to make this like a Kevin Knox love fest because there is other things too. But
no, that's exactly what this is.
Yeah,
that's what the whole season is.
But did you see the one pass that he threaded through 2 guys? It went out of bounds, but it hit Mudiay right in the hands, and Mudiay fumbled it, and it went out of bounds. And it
Mudiay?
Yes.
Are you sure he made a mistake?
Yeah.
We're talking about the same Mudiay?
Yeah. Can you believe it?
No, I really can't. I'm shocked.
But Knox hit him with this nice little bounce pass.
Yeah.
He was around half court on the left side, and he threw it on an angle diagonally to Mudiay, who was streaking down the right side of the court, but he was behind the defenders. So Knox got the ball through where it needed to go, and then Mudiay botched it. But that was something that we had discussed about Kevin Knox being a potential sort of a playmaker on the wing if he had that ability, and that's something that he had talked about a lot too, being able to make the right reads and passes. And again, not to go full-blown overreaction over the first preseason game in his first NBA minutes, but it's like those little things, like making that kind of a pass, like having the instincts to do it and being able to fit it through and get it there, even though it wasn't a successful pass from Mudiay's end. That was good. Seeing him really fight and scrap on the boards, that was good. Like, we know he's going to get his shot opportunities, so the 13 points don't overly wow me because it's something that we expect from an offensive talent like him. But seeing him, fight and be physical and make those right reads was something that I really, really enjoyed. So what about you?
Going to overtime, by the way.
Excellent.
108.
That's exactly what we need in the preseason, in the first game.
It's perfect. Yeah, just get as many Ron Baker minutes as we can because hopefully he plays little in the season. But yeah, I think your point about Knox is great because the concern that we have with him going into the season, I'm not worried about him scoring. I think about 13 points is what we should expect him to average during the season.
I forgot if we discussed it on prior pods, but I think we had agreed somewhere between like 12 being comfortable, 15 being like the max, barring like a breakout, phenomenal rookie season.
And on only 9 shots, too. That's what I like to see. 4 of 9. He had 2 threes, 3 or 4 from the line. He got to the line, and he got his rebounds. I think what I loved seeing with beyond Knox and to some other guys that we saw this with Knox and Hardaway and some of the other forwards that got rebounds, Cezonia, they got the rebound, and they're pushing it up the court. And that's clearly a Fizdale thing. He's saying, when you get that rebound, my ball handlers, because I have faith in you guys, a Hardaway and Knox, all of these wings that have the potential to run some pick and roll, to do some things, push that ball up the court and see if we can't take advantage of the defense before they get set. And even with Trey Burke, we see that. I think Trey Burke, Fizdale clearly loves his stamina, because you can tell Burke running up and down the court. As soon as he gets that inbounds pass, he's running up and down. And what I think is kind of ironic is one of the teams that really started to make this a staple of their offense, which was running the ball up the court no matter what, was Hornacek's Suns with Goran Dragic. So it's a little ironic that the Knicks are doing this after they fired Jeff Hornacek. But either way, from Knox, you love the little things. I tweeted this out too. He's not a guy that always jumps off the screen. And this is why for a period of time when I was doing my college evaluations, I kind of fell out of love with him. I wasn't all that intrigued with him anymore. He started to fall down draft boards a little bit because he had a tendency to disappear in games. He'd have a game against Tennessee and he would have 6 points and he'd shoot 4 times, 6 times, and just not do that much. But that could kind of also go the other way, where you look at the box score, you're like, oh wow, Kevin Knox had 13-9 tonight, or 13-10, or 14-8, where he had a good game, but he didn't necessarily jump off the screen. And that's why he has a nice floor established, because he also is going to lead the Knicks in minutes tonight, unless there are overtime minutes that end up getting doled out that push someone else. But he led them with 26 minutes played in a preseason game, which tells me that he's going to be given every opportunity to not only start, but to play a leading role in this offense once the regular season starts.
Yeah, and one thing, when the starting lineup came out today, and I really didn't want to get ahead of myself. I almost tweeted it from the TKW account, but I felt like there was a strong possibility that I would have gotten lambasted. I was going to tweet that starting spot at the 3 for Kevin Knox is going to be his position to lose. And I held back just because it's the first game of the preseason. Courtney Lee was a scratch with a sore neck, I believe. So
yeah,
I didn't want to get ahead of myself. But when you got to see the freedom that he was allowed to play with, and again, I know it's the preseason, I just want to keep pounding that home point, that point home. But the freedom that he was allowed to play with, and how long of a leash, referencing the minutes that you just described, that he had, he led the team tonight. So I think that's really indicative of where the franchise, feels about, how they feel about him, how Fizdale feels about him, and that's what we wanted. That's what we wanted last year with Frank and Ntilikina. We wanted him to be able to just play, and Hornacek kind of had him on this weird leash. Beginning of the year, he was playing 25, 30 minutes. Second half of the year, seemingly after doing nothing wrong, as an 18, 19-year-old guard, he was sort of relegated to 15 or so minutes, stuck behind Emmanuel Mudiay and Trey Burke. So it just seemed like that's the encouraging stuff we were hoping for from David Fizdale, just to let these young guys go out there and play. Again, I know it's the preseason, but I was happy about that. And then even Trier kind of came on late in that game, and he did. He's been cooking.
Second half specifically, he got an opportunity and did something with it.
So, that was also enjoyable. But what other notes did you have?
Just one last note about the starting lineup. I think this will be their starting lineup game 1. I know that there was some talk about, it's just the first game, and they haven't messed around with it. I've said from the beginning, and we've really driven this point home, Hardaway and Cantor are locks, so forget about it. Lance Thomas is a guy that the Knicks have liked and have talked up, and they like his veteran presence, and Fizdale likes him, so it's no surprise that he ends up starting. Knox, after what we see tonight, what we see in the Summer League, I don't see how they don't start him right from game 1. It's not like a Ntilikina or a Porzingis when they came in where they didn't have the body or the experience. Knox has the frame to already come out here and be an NBA player. There shouldn't be a concern. It's just start him from game one. So you got those four. At that point, then it's just Burke or Ntilikina, and I wouldn't be surprised if they start Burke. I don't agree with it, but at the end of the day, it's not really that important because I think they'll still get their minutes either way. The annoying thing, which I said during this program moving in, and then we saw a lot of tonight, was the Ntilikina Mudiay minutes, which are just atrocious for everyone involved. These two shouldn't play together because number one, there's a lot of reasons. We can get into all of them. Number one is you're limiting yourself in terms of floor spacing right off the bat because no one respects either of those guys from three. And we have aspirations about what Frank can become as a three-point shooter, but he's not there yet. He's not a threat. Teams aren't going to regard him as a threat. Number two, every time Emmanuel Mudiay is on the floor, he makes his teammates worse. We have ample evidence of that being the case. So when you play him with your young, budding point guard, it's not what you want. Whether you think Frank is a point guard, a shooting guard, an off-ball guard, whatever you think he is, there are no scenarios where he should be playing any minutes with Emmanuel Mudiay, if only because you want to let Frank learn in the pick and roll and give him opportunities to play off the ball as well, to be a spot-up shooter in the corner, do different things, play with the basketball, and also serve a role that the Knicks can rely on him off the ball when you have another guard. Or, in this scenario, with the Knicks, they have other wings that can do these things. Mm-hmm. So when you have Hezonja and Knox and Hardaway and Courtney Lee to a certain extent, and even Trey Burke next to Ntilikina, these are guys that can play with the basketball. So I don't see why Mudiay and Ntilikina play minutes together. The lineups are brutal. But then the question is, if Frank doesn't start, when would those minutes with Ntilikina and Mudiay not come? Because the Knicks clearly want to give Mudiay a chance here. I don't know if that's the right move, and I can say with almost the utmost certainty that it's not, but it seems like something that they're prioritizing. So I hate those lineups, and I want to see less of them, and that means Ntilikina starting. But at the end of the day, all you want to see is less Mudiay in general.
So I guess my hang-up is then where, because there is going to be no lineup to play Mudiay in. You know, there's going to be like no. He very clearly makes everybody worse, and then that's why I always think about, well, if he's not going to play with Frank, then where is he going to play? Like, what's the optimal lineup for him? And it's like, I don't know that there is one. Like, I think you just sort of got to hope he just gets phased out at some point. So I guess my question to you is, I mean, how long is his leash going to be? I understand giving him a chance. He's I think 22 years old. He's still young. You think maybe you get him in this new system with Fizdale, and we've seen it happen with players. It's not a frequent thing that happens, but sometimes guys get the right coaches, they realize that potential that they had, and then, you know, it's a nice story. But how long of a leash do you think that they're actually going to give Mudiay here?
Longer than fans want, and longer than we would like to think that they would give him.
So you're thinking after the All-Star break?
Oh, I think he'll play the whole season. I don't think that he'll, unless he's atrociously bad. But here's the thing with Mudiay. He will have those games every once in a while where you'll remember last year he had, 14 points in the first quarter against, did they play Indiana? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, maybe this is something he can do. And then he'll be terrible for the next 5 games. But his awfulness comes a lot from the underlying numbers and the underlying statistics, even beyond the eye test. So we can watch him play and know that he's bad, but when you look, he's consistently one of the worst guys in terms of plus minus. He struggles to play with guards that also want the ball because he's not much of a shooter. He's not a great pick and roll player. He attacks the rim, but he's not a good finisher. There's just not a lot he does well, but I still think that he's the kind of guy that a front office can talk themselves into and say, hey, let's just keep it going. But I think he'll get all of this year because, again, I don't think it matters because I think the Knicks are going to be so bad. But I don't want them to give Frankie almost a treatment where you're putting a rookie in a bad situation to develop bad habits. And that's what I worry about when you play with a guy like Emmanuel Mudiay. And you know, it's hard to really lambast a guy this much, and it's not because of one preseason game, just to be clear. We know that Mudiay, we have so much evidence of years of him not being a positive player on the basketball court. So he's just not a guy that you really want to expose to that many minutes, but I do think that the Knicks are going to give him 20 minutes a game, which then you ask, where are those minutes going to come from and who's going to be paired with? And it's going to be Frank if they're going to start Trey Burke.
Okay, so what other observations did you have tonight? Was there anybody else that jumped out to you? Or...
Well, Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson's a big one.
What did you like? What didn't you like?
All right, so a couple things that you have to like. I mean, his energy is infectious, and you can tell. When he's on the court, he is 110% all the time. He's just bouncy as hell. Like,
he got Keith ejected.
Yes. Oh, that was fantastic. Did you see there was Keith kind of kept talking because they had a little spat, and they kind of went chest to chest. And then Robinson they came back down the court, and Robinson was just kind of like, dude, just shut up, man. And Keith kept talking, and the ref just pointed right at him and tossed him. And I think for just a split second, Robinson thought they might have been teeing him up again. And he had that brief flicker of fear in his eye where he's like, oh, no, I want to keep playing basketball. Don't do this to me. And then they tossed Keith out. I loved it. It was great. But beyond that bulldog attitude, it's the bounciness. He can get up when he's with a guard. The absolute gall and temerity he has attacking the rim is what jumps off the screen. And you love, in a pick and roll with anyone, he's a threat when he's running the floor. On defense, his energy, again, is great, especially around the rim. You know, he had a couple nice plays on guys that are driving. He does a good job of utilizing his arms around the hoop to adjust if a guy tries to scoop one around him. He does a good job of foiling that. Some of the negatives, which we're going to see, I mean, he had 3 fouls in 9 minutes early in the game. So that's always going to be a concern with him just because he's going to keep jumping all over the place. There was a couple times where he ends up in a pick and roll. And the Knicks are mostly going to play a pretty passive pick and roll strategy. They're going to play a conservative. The center's going to drop back. They're not going to try to be too aggressive and get really switchy with it. So with Robinson, if he's dropping back and he jumps out for a second, there was one play where he jumped out. Wizards center gets the ball down low, goes up for the layup. Robinson doesn't even really try to block the shot. He just fouls him, but he just kind of throws his arms out over there. So those are the things when you're watching him as a young player, he's going to struggle with, and the foul trouble is going to be a factor. But then I would also say he's not expected to play that many minutes anyways. So if he's going to pick up 4 fouls, but he's only going to play 15 minutes, it's not the end of the world. It's just a matter of putting that guy at the line, giving the opposition points that are easy to get from the charity stripe. But you know, beyond that, it's for a second round pick, we don't expect him to be overly good, but I was also surprised with how many minutes he played. I didn't expect him to play quite as many. He played 16, and then he didn't play as much as the game went on. He was also the first big off the bench. Him and Moutier came in as the guys to replace the starters in the first quarter. So that was encouraging, and it shows that the Knicks are probably going to give him another guy that's going to get an opportunity to succeed or fail, fly by the seat of his pants. So what do you think of Mitchell Robinson tonight? Or should I say Mitchell Lobinson?
Mitchell Lobinson, yeah, he got dubbed the newly anointed. So a lot of the same points, and a lot of those points were things that we were fearful of the last couple of weeks as we sort of previewed this season and his role in it.
Right.
And
before you continue, he didn't do anything tonight that surprised me. It was exactly what we saw in Summer League, and we're going to express the same concerns that we had.
And to build on that, that's sort of a good thing too, because had he come in here and just gotten just bulldozed left and right, not been able to really make any kind of an impact, even with his activity, that would have been discouraging. And we saw him catch lobs and have some sort of an offensive impact in Summer League. And again, had he not been able to find those lanes in NBA action, again, it is preseason, but these are now actual NBA players. Even if a couple of them are fringe, they're still actual NBA players, which is a vast difference from the Summer League. So the fact that he was still finding those lanes, like there was that one play where Moutier threw a nice little lob from a little over half court where he threw it down. And it's like, seeing that kind of stuff keeps you encouraged for the potential that he has. But again, I know you guys got roasted for the last pod. I wasn't on this one for your hatred of Mitchell Robinson. But
we hate him.
Yeah,
we hate him with every fiber of our being. We hate him.
Yeah.
Just make it clear.
Yeah, but that's all we were trying to say is look, there is potential. And for a second round pick, and maybe he is a first round talent, I actually wholeheartedly believe that. I think had any team seen what they saw in the Summer League, he probably would have went top 20. But that's just my opinion. But the fouls are going to be there, and it's just his age. It's just he's still kind of growing into himself a little bit. His instincts are clearly there. You can see he's right. He reads, to me, he reads the plays well, sometimes too well, that he bites and believes, guys are going to go when they aren't going to go, or he throws himself, his body into the offensive player. Like, these are things that are going to happen all year if he plays. And that's okay, because if he's still doing things that he's good at, like he's still catching the lobs, if he's not getting run over, at this age and this point in his career, like those are still positives. Like, nobody's trying to hate him, but it's like, this is what we mean by he's not ready to start yet. It's not because we don't want him to start. In a perfect world, he is Clint Capella 2.0, and then we trot him out there over Cantor, and he makes a dramatic impact, and everybody's very happy. But, he really isn't ready yet. He can be a really good impact big off the bench. I believe that. I don't know what capacity or what minutes, but I think if he gets adjusted well, I think that's very possible. But I think when, people kind of laid into you guys last week, they weren't really understanding the message. We believe in him. We're high on his talent and his upside. There's a lot to like even in tonight's game beyond what we just saw in the Summer League. But, there are still lots of cons, and it's not because we don't like the guy. It's because it's the same thing with Frank. We have lots of cons with Frank and his offense. We love Frank. We want Frank to be great. But if Frank wants to be a starting guard in this league, not just a point guard, a starting guard, he has to improve dramatically in the offensive end. He just does. Or else he's going to be just a defensive guard, and you could find plenty of those on the benches or for situational times in the game. So this is just the natural critique that happens with young players. So just to close off with the Mitchell Robinson thing. So yeah, I mean, I like mostly what I saw. Again, my complaints are the same as the ones you had, but other than that, I didn't have a ton that I hated or enjoyed overly a ton. But one guy I did want to talk about was the new guy, Mario Hezonja.
Yes.
The pros was he hit shots. The cons
were he took shots.
No, I didn't mind. I mean, he was 3-6 from the field. He was 1 of 3 from deep. I was mostly concerned with how sloppy he played.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's his passing too. In Orlando, you would see all the time he would try to do these crazy passes, and you could just see the coaching staff is like, "Oh my god, can you please just not?" He's like Michael Beasley in a sense, although he's a much better shooter. He's a much different player, but in just the sense that he can be wildly entertaining 1 second and then supremely frustrating in the next.
So overall, I didn't mind what he was trying to do. Like, I got it. He was trying to get some shots, get into the flow of the offense, and with that, he didn't want to just shoot, so he was trying to pass a lot. And you'll see that with new teammates from time to time. They want to fit in and impress and build that chemistry up. But you don't love 5 turnovers. This was an argument we had all day in Slack today about why Hezonja wasn't starting over Lance Thomas, and we said, well, with Lance, you get some 3-point shooting and some defense, and that's exactly what we got from Lance today. And
right.
I don't want to sit here and suddenly tout that was a correct take, because Mario could play very well the rest of the year, like we all hope he does. But I think in this moment that was the right move. I didn't hate what I saw from Hezonja, despite the turnovers. I guess it's not something that you love to see, but I guess I understand why it happened, and I don't hate it in the first preseason game.
Yeah. I didn't hate it either. I think he's a guy that this team will need just because they're going to need some offense from the wings. On a side note, I think that their wings are going to be kind of the engine that drives this team, because it's going to be Hardaway, Knox, Hezonja. These are the guys that are going to be your shooters. You're going to have your Trey Burks, and Cantor's going to get his inside. But I really think that the wings are going to be the engine of this team, and whatever Courtney Lee can provide too. So for Thomas, he's one of the most intriguing players to me, Lance Thomas, just from a pure basketball sense. He had 12 points today, 2 threes, was exactly a normal Lance Thomas game, but he is one of the worst rebounders I've ever seen. He doesn't pass the basketball. He can't do much once he gets in the lane, although he did have a nice driving layup today. So, and the numbers don't necessarily paint him as a great defender. So he's just one of the most confounding players, because theoretically he's a good fit in some of these lineups for the Knicks. But when you have it in practice, it doesn't always come to fruition, and they need to make sure that they deploy him in the right scenarios. I know you're a big Lance Thomas guy.
I'm not even a big Lance Thomas guy as much as I'm a big Lance Thomas doesn't suck guy. I think that's what always ends up happening with this is.
So you're not dying on the hill. You're just kind of sitting on the edge.
Yeah, because everybody likes to say Lance Thomas stinks, and I don't get it. And it's a lot of Knicks fans that do this, and he doesn't. I mean, he's generally like the 5th or 6th option on a team. When he's on the court, he's never the 1st or 2nd or even 3rd option. At best, he's 4th on the court. He's asked to just sit there and take open threes. You know, if he's got an open layup, then go for it. But he's not asked to do anything. So I just find it strange for a guy that since he's been in New York has hit 40% of his threes, the thing that he's generally asked to do on offense. I find it very strange that we don't like that guy. And especially he's been on a bad team. So if you for the last 3-4 years that he's been here. So when you look at all of his data, it's very hard to show that he's been a good defender because we know how finicky defensive statistics can be.
Agreed.
And it's very hard to isolate the impact there. And especially when you're on a bad team with tons of roster turnover year after year, it's just, I feel like nobody's really able to do him the justice that he deserves in the sense that he just kind of gets chalked up to being this 5-6 point per game, just garbage is the way
just
a lot
role
of
player.
A lot of fans treat him poorly. I feel like. I mean, he's a role player. What are we expecting from him? Hit a couple of open threes. He generally gets one of the toughest, if not the toughest, assignments defensively. And when you're a bad team, and again, he probably wouldn't be the best defender on a good team or a great team. So he's just a regular, solid defensive role player who can hit a couple of threes, asked to take on the toughest defensive assignments every night. I'm not saying he's a good player or a great player or anything of the sort. I'm saying the conclusions that are leapt to say that he's a bad player are just out of hand. I think that is just way too much. Like some of the reactions to him starting today were just gross. Oh, well, if you signed Mario Hezonja, why wouldn't you start Mario Hezonja? It's like, well, he just got here. You don't know how he's going to fit in the flow of the offense. And also, even in the preseason, you'd like to have some sort of balance in your lineup. You have, Cantor is going to give you only offense. Burke, who's only going to give you offense. Timmy, who's only going to try to give you offense. And then Knox is a rookie. Knox isn't going to be able to defend well. And, yeah, you need one guy in there who's going to be able to play some kind of defense.
Tim Hardaway and Mario Hezonja probably shouldn't see that many minutes together either. I just worry about having two guys out there that like to chuck like they do. And all of a sudden, if you throw Trey Burke in that mix, you're going to be in for some ugly shot selection. And I don't know if the Knicks really want to broach that topic. That makes me a little wary. But I got one stat for you that I want to throw out there because it goes right into some of the discussion we've had about how the Knicks have attacked bringing up the basketball and working in transition. The Knicks had 24 fast break points tonight. They averaged 8.6 last year, which was 29th in the NBA. They had 11 at halftime. So this is a team that looked to push the basketball, and it was clearly evident. So do you think that the Knicks will look to do that as the season goes on? Do you think that's something that will help them? And do you think that it's something that can continue?
I mean, I think it's going to help them. I feel like that's the only thing that they could really do to help themselves, to be honest. And it matches up with how Fizdale wants to play. And I just think that the guys that he has in this team are sort of tailored to do that. Not that they're going to be successful at it, but I just think that's sort of the only option, in my opinion. I mean, this team isn't going to be a team full of defensive stalwarts and stoppers. Even with some of the new additions, they're not going to really be an aggressive team from deep. So, I mean, they got to get out and run, right?
How many average defenders are on this team? Just average. Lance Thomas, Frank Ntilikina, Courtney Lee.
That's it. That's probably it. I mean, we don't... Even if Mitchell Robinson is good at defense, he's not going to be good NBA level good. He's going to be good for a rookie good. You know what I mean? He's not going to be... NBA impact level. Because no rookie is. And that's not an indictment against him. It's just even Frank last year. Like, Frank was not. His defense was weird. Like, it was very situational. Like, as a pick and roll guy, he was like elite. But you have to isolate how these guys are effective. So rookies generally aren't good as a whole. But
Frank did not show much tonight. He was kind of quiet. Like, and it's what we expect. I think that I'm just completely enamored with how the Knicks as a collective decide to deploy him this year. Because like we mentioned, the Moutier pairing is just not going to work for me. So with Frank, you play him his 20 minutes. And I know we want to play the young guys a lot of minutes, but at the same time, you don't want to just throw these guys out there to the Wolves for 32 minutes, especially a guy like Frank. He does look, even on the court, it's kind of funny because we take this stuff for granted because we watch the Knicks so much and we follow these guys on Instagram and we see their progression. But if you watch the first game last year to this year, like, you can tell even his frame on the basketball court from far away, he looks so much bigger.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, we knew that in Summer League he looked fucking yoked. And
exactly.
And just seeing him, now kind of stay and maintain that shape is always a good thing. I don't know if I'm worried about them playing him in the different guard positions or not, if that makes sense. Like, does that allow him more room to grow, or does that confuse what he's good at? Do you know what I'm saying?
Line. Yeah, it's a fine line.
And
that's on the coaching staff.
And I feel like I honestly, I had no quarrels with how Jeff Hornacek was handling him the first month and a half of last season. I felt like Frank got all the right opportunities. He was playing like 20, 25 minutes a game, pretty much exclusively at the point guard position. We got to see him a decent amount with KP, and we saw a lot of those flashes that we enjoyed. We saw those earlier in the year during that time period. And since then, it's just been sort of a mismatch. I mean, we've seen him play like only at the two. We've seen him start at point guard. And now with Fizdale doesn't want to put a label on him, which is fine. I agree with that. But I guess I'm concerned because in trying to not make him something he's not, that usually gets referenced as him not being a point guard. But what if it's the opposite? What if it means trying him out at the two is making him something he's not? It's a very... How do you feel about it? Because I honestly don't know how to feel about it. I don't care what position he ends up being as long as it's whatever he's best at. But do you see what I'm trying to ask? Because I'm very confused by what the proper approach should be to be getting the most out of him here.
So you're basically saying, should they assign him one role or should they give him opportunities to do a lot of different things? And you're worried if they let him do a lot of different things, he'll be unsure of what his ultimate role is? Is that the concern?
Basically, like, are they going to let him play too much in different spots? Whereas, like, if you restrict him a little bit,
I think you roll him out there in different lineups and you let him be the lead pick and roll ball handler in some, and in others he plays off the ball. The more that you can put a guard in different scenarios in 2018, the better that they can get. I'm not worried about Frank being pigeonholed into one certain spot, and I think the Knicks have opened themselves up to allowing him to become whatever he ends up being. And I think that they're leaving it up to the coaching staff and, honestly, Frank himself to fulfill whatever his ultimate destiny is, because we spilled a lot of ink. It's talked about a lot about whether Frank is the point guard of the future or not for this team. But when you're putting him on the court with certain players, he can be the point guard or the shooting guard. And this is the problem with Emmanuel Moutier. Moutier has to have the ball in his hands to be effective. And even then, he's not effective. Trey Burke also does, but at least Trey Burke is more of a threat to score and can get in the paint and makes better passes once he's in there. And Burke has talked more about kind of shifting his shot profile to become more of a three-point shooter this season because his mid-range frequency was just too high last year and it's shot at an unsustainable clip, which I'm sure we'll bring up plenty of times this year. But with Frank Ntilikina, he's out there. He's going to be a good defender no matter what. So as far as I'm concerned, he's got that floor already in place, which is nice because that's what you need as a guard. If he was a guy that was struggling this much on defense and on offense, and we weren't convinced that he was going to be such a weapon on defense, then it's a totally different story. But we know that he's an asset on that end, and there's no reason we should expect that to change. It's going to be about the offensive development, and the more that you watch, the more the time goes on, you struggle to see if he'll ever be able to reach that peak. And that's the thing to follow this season. It's how they use him with other guards, and it's what type of upside, the little things that we see, and it's the minor signs that can maybe end up paying off. We talk about how young he is, so he has a lot of room to grow this season, and the Knicks should give him every opportunity to do so in a variety of different situations and lineup constructions.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just, where do you see him ultimately ending up here? Because if you asked me before tonight's game, even just after watching the Summer League games, my heart would have still wanted to say he's going to be the point guard, but my gut probably would have said he's going to develop into the 2 just because of how much weight he added and then the height he grew an inch. And I started to feel like he was going to be the 2. But what do you think?
It's just hard to see him at this stage. And, when we're talking the short term here, I'm talking this year, next year, the next couple years that we're looking to Frank. To me, to be a good point guard in the NBA in 2018, it's hard to be a good point guard and not be a threat in that pick and roll scenario, because you look at all the best guards have just a knack for step back threes, being able to drive, and Frank hasn't shown, especially with the threes yet, that he has an ability to do that. And we know he's young. We always want to give that caveat because we know that the potential is there for him to achieve those kind of things. But when it comes down to it for this team, they should just want another guard. And it's what comes into question is, how is this team going to look in 2 years? Well, Frank Ntilikina need to be their point guard of the future because the Knicks are going to have another draft pick this year. And that's going to be a high draft pick, presumably. And there are some guys at the top of this draft that are ball handlers, and that could come in and potentially take some of that load off. The more ball handlers you have, the better. We've talked about it. Look at the Boston Celtics with their roster. Why are they so good? Because they have versatility up and down the lineup.
Right.
Kyrie Irving is clearly a point guard. But they also have guys. Gordon Hayward, how much did he run the pick and roll in Utah? You're going to see him run the pick and roll a ton this season. Frank Ntilikina can still be an asset without being the point guard of the future, if you know what I mean. He doesn't need to be that. For those that still believe he can be that, I have no qualm, and I think that there's still reason to. And I'm certainly not saying that anyone is crazy for thinking that. I still haven't exactly made up my mind. But the bottom line is what we see with guards in the NBA today. You need to be able to run the pick and roll. You need to be able to shoot that 3 ball, and you need to be able to finish around the rim. And those are things that Frank is still severely struggling with and will need to just take to another level to be able to reach his future potential. But he's still an asset for this team. His defense gives him a built-in, caked-in floor that allows him to be an asset on the floor at all times. Just a matter of figuring out those little nuances. And that comes with lineup decisions. That comes with nurturing. That comes with better shooting on the perimeter to give more space. It's all connected, and it's about being put in the right situations.
Yeah, no, I agree very much. I'm just trying to think of any other...
I have a thing that I'm going to say, and this isn't going to sound crazy, but I really mean this when I say it. Are you ready?
Yep.
I think Kevin Knox is going to be really good. And I'm worried about how...
I'm glad I was sitting down when you said that.
No, listen to me. Listen to me. Because I know it doesn't sound like much. I'm worried about how optimistic my brain is about this. Because we always need to be measured. And I try to be calculated with this. And even with Porzingis, when he started playing well, I think Knox is going to be really, really good. And he just does so many things well on the floor. And that jumper is just a thing of beauty. And he makes it look so easy. I said this when I did the videos, when I watched Kentucky this year in the Summer League. He's just so smooth with the basketball. In the open floor, he is so smooth. He can run the pick and roll. He had one real nice coast-to-coast sweeping layup. I have concerns about him committing too soon to an action once he gets in transition and as a ball handler where he can end up kind of getting out of control. But either way, the way that he carries himself too, it's something that Breen and Frazier said on the broadcast tonight. He always looks composed. He's always calm. His demeanor is always the same. He's very just even keel. And his scoring is just comes so naturally to him. As a wing in the NBA, he is tall, he is long, he can pop out on the pick and roll. He had a couple nice passes. You already mentioned one. He had a couple nice passes off the pick and roll. He had a nice little touch pass to, I think it was Lance Thomas, who hit a three. I'm wildly optimistic about him. I'll always temper expectations with Robinson just because even at his peak, I still think he's the type of player that's hard to fit in every single NBA lineup. You have to formulate a certain lineup with a guy that is not a threat from anywhere outside 3 feet. But with Knox, I think we saw some people that were big Miles Bridges fans have some consternation because Miles Bridges looked really good in their first couple of games. I chatted with a couple of people because I was interacting with a ton of people during draft time that liked Miles Bridges, and they said, I hope Knox ends up doing okay. My hot take, and it's not the hot take in the purest sense of the word, but I'm wildly optimistic about his potential, and I think he's going to turn a lot of heads this season around the league, not just with the Knicks. And I'm on record for saying that.
I mean, it's hard to argue otherwise, right? I mean, in the summer league, he looked everything that you just described, very polished, very smooth, looked like he belonged on the court. In the summer league, it looked like he didn't belong in the summer league, It looked like he belonged in the NBA. And even seeing him tonight, it just looked like he just looked like an NBA player. Like, Frank, last year we had to wait for moments where he looked like an NBA player.
Yes.
And offensively, those moments didn't really come often. And defensively, they started to appear more often. But Knox kind of right away, just the way he fit into the flow of the offense. He didn't really look unnerved. He started off a little bit slow with his shot, and then it seemed like it kind of got rolling from there on out. I do like that he got to the line a few times tonight. We mentioned that at the top of the podcast with just being aggressive. And 10 boards from your wing, even at a preseason game, is pretty good. You want to see that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to like, and I mean, he's got a grown man's body. What is he? 19 years old.
20.
I mean, 20. I mean, the list goes on for things that we should be excited about with Knox. And again, like you said, we should always be cautiously optimistic and try to not get ahead of ourselves. But when you see a guy just every time you see him at a new level, whether it was the summer league or his first preseason game, and just be able to fit in so easily, it just seemed very seamless. Like it just seems like that transition, and he's inevitably going to go through some rough patches this season. Of course he is, but to see how nonchalant and how easy it's been so far, that's very, very encouraging. And I, just like you, am enjoying that very, very much. I was worried pretty tremendously tonight that he was going to come in and struggle. We know against the likes of an Otto Porter Jr. or Kelly Oubre or even Bradley Beal is a pretty capable defender. They have some guys on the wing there on the perimeter that he was matched up with, could have been matched up with. Even Austin Rivers was a sneaky good defender. And
True.
He just did okay. And again, I don't want to get ahead of myself. It's game 1 of the preseason of a very long year ahead of us. But he checked a lot of the boxes that we were looking for, including some with that we weren't. The 10 rebounds, that quiet double-double like you mentioned was good. Had he had 5 or 6 rebounds, we would have talked about his rebounding being pretty good. But the fact that he got 10 is obviously that's great. If he averaged 10 rebounds, we would be singing his praises from the mountaintop. So just a lot to like. We'll see what happens in the next game. I believe it's Wednesday. And
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yep. So we'll go from there. We have a lot. There's a lot of ground to cover between now and then. So hopefully we see more of the same. But again, I do want to agree with you. I do, and how I am with the Knicks. Even with Fizdale, you see the way I tweet about it on the account. Yeah, I really like Fizdale. I really like the culture that they're building. I really like Scott Perry, but I'll believe it when I see it. And
that's how it should be.
But when you start to see it just a little bit with Kevin Knox, it's very enticing. I agree with you. It's very hard to I guess practice that cautious optimism that we love to preach.
He is 19. I thought his birthday was a year earlier, but so he is 19 because I thought he turned 20, but he turned 19.
I'd like all the listeners that we have to mark this day down. Of all the times Matt has corrected me, of all the times, this one time.
And this is the guy that I did all this stuff, and I'm sure during when I was doing my prep, I was like, this guy's only 18 years old. Don't worry about it. He's so young. Mark it down.
Today's the day. Today's the day Matt tried to get me, and he was wrong. So I'll take my one win in the last calendar year and put it in my pocket. I'll enjoy that.
Take your victory lap. Enjoy it. It'll come back. It'll come back to get you. Don't worry. It'll come back to bite you.
So it certainly will. So did you have any other notes from the game? Anybody else that?
Yes, I have a couple notes on some guys that came in late. We started recording during the fourth quarter, so we didn't get to watch quite as much, but. So you mentioned Alonzo Trier before.
I certainly did because that boy's good.
Yes. Well, here's my worry about him. So let me preface it by saying he was quite good. 13 points in 21 minutes, 3 of 7, got to the line 6 times, hit all 6 free throws. He has one of the most committed tunnel visions I've ever seen in my entire life for any player.
Sheer determination.
Wildly impressive. But I worry that in a normal game setting, which is why I think he should spend most of his time in Westchester this year, which is why I don't mind if the Knicks keep him on the two-way deal. But they've also been really impressed with him, so we'll see what they end up doing. But he should be able to get an opportunity to be the leading scorer for a team before he starts to be in the NBA and learn. Because at Arizona, it was a weird team too because they had Ayton and Rollie Alkins and Parker Jackson Cartwright and Ristich. They had a strange team where he didn't get to completely always take over. If you give him an opportunity to go in Westchester and just say, you're the offense and you're going to be playing with Isaiah Hicks, you have some of these other guys sometimes that'll end up helping you out, but they should give him an opportunity there. My dad works with a guy that knows Alonzo Trier and chats with him pretty often. And Alonzo Trier said that in the next 2 to 3 years, he'll be the best guard on the Knicks. Said it. Like, just straight up, that's what he believes. So his confidence he wears on his sleeve.
I mean, that's certainly a thing that you would want from a young player. So,
but is it hubris if it goes too far? If you're saying something like that when you're a two-way player and you are an undrafted free agent?
I don't know if it's hubris. It's going to be hubris if he doesn't do anything with his opportunities. I think right now it's not. We can certainly look back on this in a while, and it will be. But I think to begin your NBA career, and I think that's the kind of confidence that you'd want to have. I know it's a different route in a sense from another Westchester guy who's up here now in Trey Burke, who Trey had to go get humble down there and kind of enjoy being in the G League and enjoying the journey to get back up and not really saying too much and letting his work speak for him. But I kind of like it. I mean, he was a gunner in Arizona. He's going to be a gunner in Westchester, and he wants to be a gunner at the NBA level. And he succeeded at Arizona enough that he got this opportunity here. So he's going to spend a lot of time in Westchester. So let's hope that he proves it there and gets the call up. I guess my question to you is, would you, after today's game, so entirely recency bias, but would you rather have Alonzo Trier on this NBA roster for the New York Knickerbockers, or would you rather have Ron Baker?
In a vacuum, Trier. But if the Knicks have any future aspirations for Trier, I do think he would benefit more from being in Westchester and being the number one option.
Undoubtedly. And undoubtedly, I agree with you.
So in a vacuum, you'd obviously rather have Trier because we both think Ron Baker is useless as an NBA player.
The reason I ask is, correct me if I'm wrong, or we'll have to do some research for the next pod, but is there not a way where the Knicks, let's say Trier has a just standout, sensational preseason the rest of the way, right? Is there not a way, and I think it's through waiving a Ron Baker or somebody on this roster, like on the actual NBA roster who's slated to make that team, can't they waive somebody, one of those NBA deals, to then convert Alonzo Trier to the NBA deal?
Yes, they can do that. They can add a two-way player to the roster. I think if you give him the guaranteed money and then you flip another player's deal into the two-way deal. As if I am understanding it correctly, and please don't necessarily take that. We're certainly not capologists, but they've talked about Trier making the roster, which would lead me to believe that he would be more than a two-way player. But if he's not a guy you're going to play, then why would you have him make the roster when he can go play at Westchester? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and we've been really high on the G League for a couple of years now, especially especially the Knicks' utilization of it.
Because they've been damn good. They've had some good players come from the G League.
Yeah, and they have, for all the ire that we give their player development program at the NBA level, one thing that they do really well is manage the Westchester team and manage the transition from the Westchester team to the big league, and how they even interact during the season, with how we saw Dame Dotson sometimes play a game in the afternoon, then come up to the big league team at night. And so knowing what we know about the Westchester Knicks and the way the Knicks use the G League affiliate, I would much rather prefer Trier go and get his burn at that level. I think a lot of people still attach that negative connotation to it, that it's the G League and it's the lesser league, and if he wants to learn, he should be in the big league. But, I mean, if he comes up here, I mean, has he done enough yet to really overtake even a Dame Dotson? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, a guy who last year was on a two-way deal and showed us things and little bits and pieces and opportunities, is he going to come in and outplay what Dame Dotson did last year in those opportunities? I mean, I don't know.
Dotson wasn't on a two-way. He was just a second-round pick.
Right, but he was still back and forth.
Yes.
So my point is, I don't know if he's going to be able to outperform what we saw from Dotson, and Dotson was getting limited minutes. So I'm with you there. I'd rather they just – I too want to get Ron Baker off this team. You know that. I don't want him on this team. And if it was the choice, I would want to do that. But if we're talking about long-term development, making, Trier's ideals come to fruition here, I think you got to leave him in Westchester. Let him just get those. He's going to average 20-something points a game. He's made to score. I mean, just let him go do it in the G League. I mean, clearly that's the one facet of development that the Knicks are good with. Just let him go there. I think to me, it's an easy decision, but also, we can't overlook that Fizdale is supposed to be a player development coach, and his staff is supposed to be player development, and maybe they feel he'll be in better hands at the big league level. That we can't really speak to because we don't have enough of a sample to go off of.
We'll see. But like you mentioned, we have confidence in the Knicks' ability to develop players at that level. So I wouldn't mind, especially in the beginning of the season. You never know when the year goes on who's going to get hurt. We saw last year Cornette, Dotson, and Burke at a certain point started to get all those minutes as the year went on due to injuries and just other reasons, mostly tanking. So we'll see as that goes on. A few final notes. Speaking of Damian Dotson, had 14 points, 4 rebounds. I didn't get to see a lot of him because he played mostly in the second half, but that was good to see.
I think he scored 8 in overtime, if I'm not mistaken.
So that would make sense because I didn't get to watch a lot of overtime because we were chatting. But Noah Vonleh, 8 points. I'm curious to see what they really do with him because I liked him at Indiana when he was there. But, I mean, you never know what a guy like that can have. He had a really nice spin move dunk that got called off because of an offensive foul. So that was cool.
Yeah, that was a nice one.
Kadeem Allen played 17 minutes and had 0 points, so doing his thing tonight. Love to see that. Other than that, I think you saw some positive signs from the 2 draft picks from Knox and Robinson. And I think when it comes to preseason, that's the number one thing that I was looking for. It's Kevin Knox, Mitchell Robinson, what are they going to bring to the table? Because with Frank Ntilikina and Trey Burke, and then Hardaway and Cantor to a completely different level, we know what they're going to bring to a certain extent because we've seen them play in NBA competition already. So the preseason aspect of this doesn't mean anything to me. It's the youngest guys. It's the Knox and it's the Robinson. Because even when Frank was playing in Summer League, I didn't care. Anything he did, it was just whatever. He's just playing basketball. It's when they get to the regular season, the guys that have seen this already, that have gone through a full season or more, that we'll really get to see if they have a place in this league and can take the next steps that the Knicks hope they can as their development. But a nice overtime win for the Knicks tonight. You have any final thoughts, Kyle, before we get out of here?
No, nothing really in particular. Just going to do a couple quick little plugs. So,
go for it. Yep.
Obviously, just keep going to the Knickswall.com because this is the go-to for daily Knicks content. This is just what we do at this point. You guys know this. You keep coming back, and you're the reason why we can do this successfully. So just keep checking that every day. Right now we have the recap from tonight's game in case you missed it, or last night's game rather, when you'll be listening to this podcast. So make sure you catch up on that and more. We just had Kristaps week last week, so we detailed lots of things from his injury and recovery to who's going to carry the burden when he is missing his time this season. So, I mean, it's just good content that like you guys expect from us. Besides that, make sure you, after listening to this pod or, whenever, just make sure you go to iTunes, leave us 5 stars and a nice little review. Hopefully we'll have some little contests and things of that nature pertaining to the podcast going forward. We'd like to do more things like that for you. We had a nice couple giveaways that we did over the last couple of months, and we'd like to keep doing that. So drop us a 5-star review so that we can keep doing this for you guys. We'd really appreciate that. Last thing, make sure you check out the merch store because it is back. We took a little bit of a break since last season. It's hard to produce merchandise when there's not a whole lot going on, but you'll find in the store our latest 2 things are for both the rookies, and you'll find the latest one from tonight's game. Mitchell Robinson's shirt finally made an appearance in our store, and it's Mitchell Robinson. So take a look at that, and not just that, maybe buy the shirt. That would be really good for us and good for you because it's a fantastic and creative shirt to have. You'll also find a I Am the One Who Knocks shirts depicting new Knicks rookie Kevin Knox as Walter White from Breaking Bad. So, but there's a lot of goodies, stuff from last season that you guys will still enjoy. So make sure you take a look at that. And that's about it. You have any plugs? Anything you want to talk about?
Robinson is legendary. That's all I'm saying. It's a great shirt.
It was
fantastic.
Seamless.
Amazing shirt. So other than that, no. You got plenty of stuff. We got a ton of season preview stuff coming this week. Atlantic Division previews. We got some stuff on Enes Kanter. We got some more stuff coming tomorrow down the pipeline. So just keep an eye out. We're excited. Guys, season almost here. First preseason game in the bag. We got 2 more games this week. Plenty more to come. We're going to see you guys again this week. So you got that to look forward to later in the week, which is exciting. So other than that, Kyle, good night. We'll talk to you later.
Take it easy, buddy. Take it easy, guys.
Underneath.